A lot of people miss a really important first step whenever they're working on some kind of a big long-term goal. So I wanted to just take a second and talk about that today. My name's Karen Dudek-Brannan, and I help pediatric therapists and educators be better leaders so that they can make a bigger impact on the clients and students that they serve. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about a concept that has been referred in the past to as shit sandwiches or in other contexts, fear setting. So, when it comes to being a therapist, you obviously know that there are a ton of challenges on your plate. However, when you look at some of the resources out there for setting goals and having some kind of a vision for how you want to show up in your job, like kind of outside the therapy professional development, there's a lot of this focus on being super positive all the time and like don't worry about um, the negative and positive thinking and all of this stuff. And of course, you want to think positive and have a big vision. But a lot of times when you are in a therapy role, you have real obstacles on your plate. And so I think it could be really remiss to just totally ignore those challenges that you're facing. Even if you want to have some kind of a big vision and even if you want to think positive and actually feel more empowered. So I think that a lot of people don't realize that it can actually be very empowering to take a really good hard look at the actual obstacles that are in front of us and actually the things that we're afraid of when it comes to any kind of a goal that we have for ourselves in our professional life or in our personal life. And a lot of times for some people, I know I'm one of these people where sometimes there's just this thing that you're afraid of, and everybody's like, don't worry about it, it's fine. And they give you this false reassurance where they're kind of ignoring the elephant in the closet. And that actually, not only does it make you constantly worried and self-conscious and, just kind of ruminating about this thing that you're worried about, but also it can make you less prepared if things actually do happen. Um, for example, like when I was in the school systems, there were a lot of different projects that I used to take on to try to figure out how I could be creative in serving my caseload. And there were many times when we would need a certain amount of data in order to make certain decisions for students to be able to have services. And a lot of times we had to think about these things well in advance. So I knew having to collect all of this information was going to take time and resources. And if we didn't have it, if we didn't think about it in advance, then we were going to have people arguing with us about the decisions that we were making. There were going to be people questioning, if we were making certain recommendations to the team. And so I had to really think about those obstacles so I could prepare in advance because they were, I would always be worried when I would go into these meetings thinking like, what if people don't believe me? What if, what if somebody disagrees with what I'm recommending? And if I would have gone into that situation not prepared, if I would have gone into that situation not having thought about the things that were on my mind that I was ruminating about, and then just taken some steps to actually mitigate those risks, then it wouldn't have been a very good situation. So what I have found is that a lot of times when you're in some of these situations, when you have some kind of a thing that is something on your mind that you're worried about, it can actually be really empowering to, and again, where I have seen this term referenced is in Tim Ferriss's TED Talk, where he talks about fear setting, where you're thinking about a certain situation and you're actually defining what your fears are. And then you're thinking to yourself, what would happen, like, what am I worried about? And what would actually happen if I was in that situation and I was dealing with that thing? And a lot of times you realize that you actually could probably deal with that. And so you don't necessarily have to worry about it. You might have to take some steps in order to be prepared to deal with it. Like, In my situation, I would have to make sure that I had my ducks in a row before I showed up to the meeting. But because I knew that I did that, and because I knew that I had thought that through, I actually could show up to those meetings confident when I was making those recommendations for services. And so that can be something that can be actually empowering for you to actually think about what you're afraid of. And I've heard the term shit sandwiches, basically meaning like every situation that you're going to be in sucks some of the time. You're always going to have problems. Sometimes it can be really helpful to just kind of acknowledge and accept that whatever your situation is, sometimes you're going to have things that are kind of crappy that you have to deal with. And instead of trying to go into it thinking, oh, I'm going to, like it's bad that I have problems and, I'm never going to be able to solve all of these things, coming to a place of acceptance about what those problems are, because what you can do is go through them one at a time and figure out, okay, can I actually solve this? Maybe you actually can. And maybe there are other problems that you can't. But if you go through that list and actually kind of figure out, what am I afraid of? What are my actual obstacles? Can I do something about this? A lot of times you can kind of pick and choose where you can actually do something, and it's worthwhile to devote energy to thinking about it versus something that might not be something that you can change. So to me, that can be kind of empowering to not always be focusing on the positive things when we're thinking about how we want to show up, especially if it's something that is weighing on our mind a lot. So this can be really helpful when you have some kind of a long-term goal that you want to work on, because it can be really helpful in, if you're nervous about it, if you're thinking about certain things that you might have to do along the way to mitigate risk. It can also be helpful for ongoing things in your job as well. So I'm actually going to be doing a live event over the next 12 weeks with my friend and mentor, Stephanie Hayes, where we're going to be talking about topics such as this. And it's going to be all about the launch for a program that I'm building for pediatric therapists who want to be better leaders, called the Clinical Leadership Program. And so I actually have a page that you can go to where you can get all of the information about this live event that I'm doing with Stephanie, where we're going to be talking about the development of this program. The program is launching in September, but the live events are going to be happening every Thursday up until then. So it's going to launch the last week of September, but you can learn about the ins and outs of how I'm developing this program if you're interested in it before then. So I'm actually going to post the link to the page about the live event that I'm doing with Stephanie, where you can learn more about topics like this, and you can learn about the Clinical Leadership Program